Are three live.
You're now watching two old farts making noises.
Oh, we're here.
You know what's happened to Simon from the German? You know that alien in that holding image that you've got right at the beginning.
Right.
He took off with the car. That's the problem.
Bastards. You can't trust this is the problem. You come from another universe or a galaxy and you
They
just
come
take and
over
take
here.
and
They
take.
come over here. They take our jobs. They take
That's
our
right.
cars.
They take our women, they take everything. So
Those
that's what
illegals.
happens. The lizard people, it's terrible. I hate when that happens. So, but that's all right. At some point, we'll retrieve. And I guess we didn't like David.
No,
At some point,
he objected to the alienism.
I think so.
He's a lizard person, so he has to.
He's a
side
lizard
with his
person.
own
He's
kind.
like, that's it. We're not talking about
This is his
lizard
form of
people.
protest. He's like, I'm
That's-
not getting involved in this.
That's right.
Off he went.
Boom, and he leaves. That's too funny. Well, I'm assuming at some point when he gets back from the mothership, he will join us. In the interim, we're going to talk about creativity today and what it takes to actually. Oh, he's back. This will be exciting. We'll see what happens, but we'll ignore him because he left.
Is it really him?
So it could be. It could be his avatar. But we're going to talk about creation.
Abducted, didn't you? That's what happened.
You got abducted by the aliens, didn't you, David?
No, I got abducted by my new earbuds, which as soon as I finished the intro, just died on me. So I had to come out of StreamYard and come back in again.
No.
But the question is, who gave you those earbuds?
That's right. The lizard people.
Oh, conspiracy theories. That was a different episode, wasn't it?
I did actually send it to Stephen. I've actually been on holiday. I've been in Turkey.
Ooh, nice.
And with my friend, Mr. Rusk.
Do you have a picture of you and Elon that you can show everybody?
I'm not sure whether or not I could.
Yes, you can. Sure. Yes, you can. Oh, you can show it.
Yeah.
Show the picture of Elon. Do you have it? Is it loaded?
I was just seeing whether or not I could, whether or not I had Mr. Rusk somewhere. Maybe I did. I kept it as a souvenir because I didn't really want the football.
Okay, hold on. I have a picture of it. I will send it. I have no morals or scruples. I'm a finance guy, so I'll send it. So
let's see this. Let's see this. I'm just waiting with bated breath right here.
I could only do it. I could only do it as a PDF. So if you give me a couple of minutes, I'll load it up as a PDF.
All right, you load it while we talk about creativity.
Well, the audience isn't going to sit around for a couple of minutes.
Yeah, well, I mean,
attention spans are way shorter than that nowadays.
That's true, David.
Which I guess segues nicely into the whole creative aspect of things.
How do we? Here we go.
With people that have
here we go.
Kind of a
here we go, kids. Well, since you can't wait for David, I will do. There you go. There is David sitting on Elon Musk's lap with the president of Turkey. And there you go. There we are. There's David, everybody. Yeah, there you go. That's David's actual size, by the way. Just so you all are aware. Yeah, he's everywhere.
That's remarkable. Because I've only ever seen you in this little box.
Yeah, so that's his actual size in the little box. That's it. That's it.
Can you go full screen on that, Stephen? So everybody.
I'm you or the picture?
On the picture, so everybody.
I can't because I am the whatchamacallit here. Oh yeah, I guess I could. Hold on. I can go full screen. Hold on.
Because he was actually trying to give me a football, but I declined. So there you go. Yeah, there you go. Thank you, Mr. Musk and Mr. Erdogan. Great holiday in Turkey. Wanted me to help build a factory. But
I'm sorry to say that, but it looks like a bit like he's got a growth there.
That's the weirdest looking mole I've ever seen.
I know, right? It's a pimple. You can pop it. So, David, could you just think if we didn't love you, the things we would say? So,
David is going strangely silent now.
I was just contemplating the fact that you can go off people. it is possible. It's not like, and to be honest, I don't have to be on this bloody show anyway. I only do it just because you're so famous, Shazad, that I have to be on the show with you.
So we'll see you disappear again in a moment.
That's it.
David, your buzz are going to go again.
And I have to be on every show that Vicky's on just to annoy her.
That's true.
Yes, it's in our contract or whatever.
It's in our contract that Vicky and David have to be on every show.
I think it's time for Vicky to turn the tables. That's what's going to happen now.
There you go.
Yeah.
You'd think, but I'm just not awake enough to.
There you go.
Nice.
She's too nice. So what we were going to talk about today is something a little different than our usual show about UFOs and alien people and lizard people.
Doesn't feel much like it.
Well, insulting David is going to still be part of the show, so don't worry about that. We got that covered. So, but we're going to talk about creativity and what it takes to be creative, because everybody here, except for me, is a creative. I mean, Shiraz does his stuff with Brown Car Guy. If you guys haven't seen it, phenomenal, right? He sent me a video the other day of him and his son filming a car. We were supposed to film and he couldn't. He's like, I'm like, dude, don't worry. I got the video and I watched it.
Your apologies.
Yep. And then
Vicky
Vicky is a graphic artist. And also she dresses up to go pick up 19-year-old boys. So she's creative in both ways. And which is good. And then we have David, who not just sits there and looks pretty, which is very important, but David also makes our AI movies and makes all our little cutesy stuff and all our stuff in our merch store. So we're going to talk about what it takes to be creative and where the inspiration comes from to do this stuff. So I'm going to sit here and look pretty because I am not the creative one. So
I don't know.
We now have that blank page moment, which all creatives end up with, where we're just sitting there staring at a blank page, wondering, what do I do now?
Well, I was sort of originally feeling creative until Mr. Rusk asked me to sit on his lap, and then I felt very very uncomfortable because he either liked me a lot or he had a small torch in his pocket, one or the other. But,
okay.
And this ruined your creativity?
This has ruined your creativity. How, David?
Well, I thought it might light it up.
That's what I thought. I thought you might get inspired.
Yeah. So,
I would think that you could sue him and get $3 million like all his ex-wives do after 3 weeks of marriage.
It's funny because if you go onto the BBC website, you can actually find. I mean, it's a still that I took from the BBC website.
Yes, I think people know that.
It's quite disturbing because Mr. Erdogan, who's also, shall we say, not to everybody's cup of tea. Right. Is trying to give Elon Musk's son, the one who's called X, I think, or 10 or whatever, is trying to give him a football, which he declines.
Okay.
And then they rather embarrassedly asked him, is his mother here? And Elon says, oh, no, I'm separated with her. I just kind of look after him myself. It's an incredibly sort of, uncomfortable clip of 30 seconds. Well worth watching on the BBC.
You would think that in a diplomatic scenario, you would think that they would be briefed and informed beforehand, rather than getting into these sort of social faux pas, right? How is that even possible that he doesn't know that situation? That's just somebody's head needs to roll, really.
Yes.
I think
well, he was bouncing something which looked like a football, so it was either somebody's large testicle or their head. So the creativity part of it failed. So they weren't being. Did you see the bridge there? I'm trying to get back to creativity.
Yeah, that was a hell of a bridge. I'll tell you that was.
That was great.
It was a reach, but
you reached for it. Okay, so let's go back to creativity and get back on track. Just for fun. It'll be the first time any of our shows do that. So, and we'll start with the brown car guy because
let me paint a scenario. So right now. I reached a point where, and I probably mentioned this to you guys before, but one of the things I haven't done. So I've been involved in all aspects of publishing, right? So from newspapers to magazines, digital, video, radio, TV, everything. The one thing that I haven't done, and it's probably one of my regrets, is I haven't published a book. So, and I've had false starts. And when I mean book, I mean not I mean a fictional book, so a story, a novel. And I've tried several times. I've got probably as far as like writing a couple of chapters or something like that. But I've never managed to get all the way and actually complete something, And again, now I'm looking at the situation now, and I'm looking at this point in my life, and I'm thinking, I really want to do this, But I'm at that sort of crux where I'm like, okay, well, how do I do this? Where do I go? How can I give myself the incentive and the motivation and the willpower to do this? And I think that's sort of key to all creative types, isn't it? Is to find that motivation to get going in the first place. Or is creativity just motivation in itself?
No, it's normally called poverty. I think that's what pushes people forward.
Well, that's great. I think that's your motivation.
But David, that's a key point. That's a key point, though, David. Because if I write a freelance, so I'm a freelancer, right? So if I write an article, I know I'm writing it to a commission. So the reason I'm writing it is I know that I'm going to write it, submit it, and I'll get paid. It might get paid in a month or 2 months or whatever, but I'll get paid for that. Now, writing a novel, you have no idea if anybody will even read that,
Yeah, well, that's what J.K. Rowling said as well, because she said she was just poor, so she decided to write something and see if somebody would read it or not.
And the guy read it totally by mistake. The whole story that, if I remember reading this 100 years ago, is he was in his office either on a Saturday or he was going through the waste paper basket because somebody literally threw it away, and he picked it up and said, I'll just read a few pages, and he read the whole thing and goes, we have to have the book. So if it's meant to be, I think it's meant to be. But I think on the creative side now, with writing a book,
the key then, for Shazad? He should write as much stuff as he can and then throw it all away and see if somebody will buy it out of a waste paper bin.
Well, I mean, this is the thing. I mean, I have done that. I mean, as you know, David, we've discussed this before, but I've got an actual fiction section on my blog. But none of those stories have ever sold or anything like that. That's just stuff that the creative urge made me write, and they just kind of creatively vomited it out onto a screen, and there it is, But I don't know if they're worth anything. I don't know if anybody's ever read them. I don't know if they're worth pursuing. But it's one of those things. I mean, let me ask Vicky, because as a graphic designer, you probably also have that blank page moment where somebody's giving you a brief or something, and you're like, okay, how do you even decide where you're going to go with it?
Yeah, I think, I have the job part, right? And then I have like you have, where I have the creative fun stuff. Like I have a novel in a drawer. It sucks, but I wrote it, and at least I did it. And I think, probably a lot of people have stuff like that, but I think there's a difference between what you're doing for your job and what you're doing just because you feel the urge. Like you said, it seems to me like, if I have something that's kind of burning a hole in my brain, whether it's a story or a piece of art or something I want to do that it has to come out, or otherwise it's just going to rattle around in my brain like acid and just bother me, and I want it to, live like my child, then I'll make it, or I'll do it, or I'll write it, or I'll paint it, or I'll whatever. And it's just to give it life outside of my brain. And it doesn't have any other purpose, at least for me, other than to exist in itself. I'm not going to sell it. I might share it with people. A lot of times you kind of feel the need to kind of show it off or share it or post it or whatever. But to me, it's just kind of that moment of the creative thing is giving birth to something in your head. And it exists outside of you now. Like, it's a dumb analogy, but it's like giving birth to a child. So you have all these little creative children around. When I do it for work, it's like, and I think it does help me in my other aspect of it too. The more structure I have, the easier it is to create, which sounds counterintuitive because creative people are supposed to not be about structure, but the tighter the brief is, the more narrow the scope, color, timeline, mood, whatever, the more I have, the easier it is for me to grasp one of the ideas and make it. And I think sometimes when we have a hard time writing that novel or stuff, it's just too, it doesn't have enough form because there's not enough input yet. Right. So,
Yeah, no, I completely agree with you. I think you made a very valid point there, Vicky. First of all, I'm very jealous that you say you've actually completed a novel. That's brilliant. Well done.
Oh, it was terrible. Like,
regardless, you've done it. That's amazing.
She did it in crayons. It was very, very good.
Yeah, the important thing is actually having done it. But what you're saying, I think, makes complete sense to me, and I find the same when I'm doing my stuff. So when I'm doing a freelance assignment, like you say, you get given a brief and you go, right, this immediately sets the parameters of what you're supposed to do. So you can go away and do the research and, okay, you're going to stare at a blank page for a few minutes, but ultimately you'll get going, A, because there's a deadline, and B, because and B, because what the brief kind of is. But when you're doing your own stuff, it's kind of weird because you stare at the blank page, but eventually there's something, like you say, within you that just needs to come out. And at some point you're just like, let me just start this and see where it goes. And sometimes really crazy stuff happens. But guys, do you think that this is a significant trait of a creative type of person, or does it apply to everybody?
Everybody. I'm the same way. When I have to do a spreadsheet, I'm really old school. I storyboard out my spreadsheets and then I put them into Excel because I don't want to play around in Excel for 5 hours or even a PowerPoint. I storyboard it all out on a paper. I'm like, oh, that's what I'll do. And I move it. And to me, it just, I think everybody has that mental block. Once you start, then you just go, right? Whether it's a second or an hour. And I think longer your mental block is, the less, than, for lack of a better term, creative you become, till the stroke of genius hits you and you're like, oh, look at me. I'm the smartest guy in the room. But a thing for both of you, because you're writing, with AI now, you could take this novel, apparently that sucks, we haven't read it. AI would make it better.
You never will.
Okay. But AI can make it better.
Never say never.
That's true. AI can make it better. And then my other part of it is, we had a guy on a show, and he was telling us that he uses Amazon. He's self-published on Amazon. We've had a couple people tell us this, and they've actually sold like a couple hundred copies, whether it's in Kindle or whatever, and they bind them and send them out, one at a time as people buy them. So I think if you write something, worst case scenario, if like for you, Sharad, you're like, oh, I wrote these short stories and no one's seen them. You could literally self-publish them, in my opinion, right? You could have AI make it better if you want or not. Or you can self-publish them and make them short stories, and people could buy a book of short stories. I mean, because it's so much easier now.
Too. There's a lot of fiction websites. Like I'm on a couple. There's Cesar will know this. There's fanfiction.net. So people write fanfiction about Star Trek and stuff like that, and they'll take characters and like, I know, geek, but I love doing that because here's my characters already set, and you just have a story idea, or you watch a movie and you go, the ending of that movie sucks. I'm going to rewrite it the way I wanted in my head because this was shit. And then you go in there with your characters and you write it, and then you just stick it on these fan fiction websites, and then all the dorks in the world read it, and you've got, you're not making any money, but it's so much fun to watch all the comments or like the watch count to come up.
I mean, Vicky, it doesn't make any money, but is it actually a good way to generate an audience that potentially can lead you to something?
A lot of people do that, and then they take that audience to Kindle or to whatever, and they sell those stories there. But they can't use that fan fiction. They have to have their own original characters, but they do use that as a jumping off point.
Sorry, I find it very difficult. No, I was trying to interrupt you, but thank you. I find it very disturbing from both of you. It's a bit like a pebble in my shoe. When I originally did Starlandia, I kept meeting people like yourselves, only they were people who were painting. These are people who were producing physical art. And I used to say to them, well, what happens to it? Oh, it gets put in the drawer. Well, does anybody see it? Yeah, the kids do, the dog, the neighbors. And so I started it as an opportunity for people to send their art in so we could do something with it, to share it. Okay, we were making merchandise out of it, and we were trying to put a little bit of money back towards the artists. And I'm having the same sort of feeling towards you guys. Why don't we be creative now? Why can't you split up some of the stuff you've already got and give us some short stories and see if we can, stick them into AI, make little movies out of them, or make them into pamphlets.
It's very doable, and you're absolutely welcome.
Maybe your short story could be illustrated by Vicky.
So, David, I want to ask you this: you've worked extensively with AI, and again, just
I wouldn't say that's a.
Well, you've made movies. I mean, that's something, So let's.
David, you've made like 25 movies in AI. You have worked extensively in it. You've more than us,
right? But just answer me this, because just sticking for a moment still with that whole blank page scenario. You see, I've got a real bee in my bonnet about this, haven't I? Yeah. With that blank page scenario, right? Can AI help you to get past of, call it a writer's block, call it whatever you want to call it? Can it do that?
Yes.
Yes.
Oh yeah.
I
write a blog for Rachel's company, and I use that. Like, I'll go, okay, it's July, I want to write about summer food or whatever, and so I'll tell AI, give me an outline of a blog about this food and with this parameter, and I'll put in the brief that we talk about getting, and it spits it out, and I go, okay, and then I use that to go, because it narrows down my focus, and now I know exactly what to write, and I can just pound it out.
I do the same thing with a storyline. I have a skeleton in my head, literally,
in this closet.
In the closet, and
let's not go there.
Yeah, they keep coming out. So I have this. So I have a skeleton, and that I put into AI, and it then puts a body around it. So I'm an absolute cheat as regards that. But the thing that's holding it together is my original idea. So
that's a great analogy, actually. I like that.
Mm-hmm.
So again, going back to how or what is a good way of using AI to help with creativity. So you put in your original idea, and once it's given you sort of a framework to work with, are you then able to go back to it to sort of help keep going? Because one of the things I've found with my false starts that I've had with novels is I've sort of reached a kind of impasse or something, and I've gone, I don't know where to take it from here. Do you know what I mean? So it's kind of like it's just kind of halted there. And I'll park it and I'll come back to it, and 7 years later I've forgotten all about it, sort of thing.
The interesting thing about it is if you think to yourself, oh, that would be. I mean, I like the classics. So I like to write horror. So if I do that I could do that in the style of Bram Stoker, or H.P. Lovecraft. So. Or can I have a mixture of both? So I ask AI, I want to have a cross between Stoker and H.P. Lovecraft.
Right.
So
wow.
And then the flesh around that skeleton is a mixture of those two. And then of course you have to tweak it as well. And so it's a stepping stone. And
so tell me this: what percentage of what AI turns out do you end up using? How much do you actually end up tweaking it and changing it?
From the movies that I've made, probably 70-30. So 70% is a much better writer than me, and the 30% is my skeleton, and not quite how I would like it to be, for want of a better way of putting it.
And I use AI
when I write
extensively.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Okay. No, sorry.
Go
okay.
ahead, Stephen.
So I use AI extensively. So I started with 3.5, and then I paid the extra 20 to buy 4. And the difference between 3.5 and 4 is a high school freshman and a PhD at like MIT. That's the difference. Wow. Because you can ask it to do the same thing, and you can just look at it and you're like, wow. So the extra little bit you pay for, well worth it. And in the beginning, David will tell you, when I used to have to write descriptions, like they sucked. And then I said, okay, let's try this ChatGPT 3.5, and then we went to 4. So now when I write a description, I actually, when we get to the show, I take all my notes, I put it into a Word document, put the Word document into AI, and I say, I want you to write it engaging, blah, 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 tell it exactly what I want. It'll write it out and go, I want you to do this, 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 or write it in this style. And 10, 20 minutes later, I have the description for the show with titles and SEOs and tags, which you wouldn't come up with. And I put it in. Then when the show goes live, I use AI to watch the show, write me another summary of the show to see if I missed anything. Then I take the summary it wrote with the summary it wrote before, combine them, and then I re-put that in there during the first hour when the show's live. And then I say to it, now I need timestamps. And then AI gives me timestamps. So now, instead of having to sit and watch one video for like 19 hours, in about 15 minutes, I have done 19 hours worth of work. And it's given me, when David does an AI movie, depending on what it is, if it's a horror movie, I like Hitchcock. So I'm like, give me Hitchcock or Kubrick, or give me this, and it writes the narrative in that style. So for me, and I'm not creative, it's an excellent tool. That's why I'm saying, like Vicky's novel, you put it into AI, it'll make it a novel. Your short stories, if you wanted to tweak it, or the novels you did start, it will tweak it and take you wherever you want to go. as a joke months ago, or now it's a year ago, my wife, when we started this, said, I'm going to write you guys a how-to manual, how to make a YouTube channel successful. And she went into her office, and 10 minutes later, and David will tell you, we had a 47 or 50-page booklet on how you make a YouTube channel from nothing to, if you will, 1 million followers. And it literally is step by step. And all she kept doing, and the other thing I learned with AI is you have to ask the right question. It's sort of like being a defense attorney. If you don't ask the right question, you don't get the right answer. So you can put in a blanket statement, you will get a blanket result. So now that I know how to talk to it, I first put in the blanket, and then it gives me that. And I go, okay, now we're going to tweak the blanket, and then we're going to tweak it again. So by the third tweak, it's exactly what you want. And once you learn to speak to it and what to ask and how to tell you to deliver it, like it'll make PowerPoints, it'll do everything, how to do an analysis. But once it learns what you want, it just knows, I'll tell it what to do again. And it's like, oh, I've got that. And it goes, and then, you have it in like, say, a minute, and it's awesome. So for me, the best thing in the world. So yeah, so that's how it works. It
actually takes me longer to edit what it gives me than it would have taken me to write it in the first place. So I spend like 3 times as much time taking that and refining it and whatever.
Right.
But I found it easier, just less brain power. It's not really a creative process at that point. I'm just working, I'm like just trying to figure it out and just make something decent. So I think it's really great for that, and it makes it easier for me, and I like that. But when I'm doing something just purely creative for myself, the whole point is to get that thing out of my head the way I want it. So I don't use it for that just because why? It's not something I have to do or something,
But I
agree with Vicky. Sorry, David. I agree with Vicky on that but to be fair, I haven't tried the 4.0. I've tried the 3.5. But yeah, anytime I've asked it to do something and it's churned something out, I've looked at it and I've just ended up rewriting the whole thing, or actually just scrapping it and starting my own thing. But that's because as writers, I don't know, maybe it's part of our ego. Maybe we're just like, hang on, the bloody machine can't write better than me. I know how to write. I'm going to do this. So maybe that's part of it. I don't know. But very often I've not been happy with it. But what I have used it as is a research tool, because I found that it's quite easy. Because like you say, because it's somewhat alarming that your best friend now is AI, because you said you know how to talk to it. So that's quite weird. But
it just brought back to him.
It does.
Does it?
It is a very interesting point, because with Google, you can ask Google certain questions, but it will just give you pages. Whereas with the ChatGPT, you can ask it a question and it will troll the internet, and then it will give you that summary of what you want. So for research purposes, I found it to be quite useful. But Vicky and David, obviously Stephen's a big fan of AI, but do you guys think it's cheating in the creative process? Don't all jump in at once.
No, I was trying to be polite.
It depends for me.
Yeah, go on.
It depends on how much. There's a lot of artists, fan art that I follow on Twitter and stuff like that, and they will take a photograph, run it through an AI program, and then spit it out as if they painted it. And they're like, well, I created that. Well, no, you didn't. And that ticks me off. But if you use it as, like David said, I think if you use it as a skeleton, like you would in sculpture, you have a wire framework and you put the clay on or whatever.
Yeah.
Then to me, it's not cheating. It's just a tool. Like Stephen said, you're just using a sculpture tool, or you're using, it's part of your arsenal of things you would use. There's a fine line.
I appreciate what you're saying, Vicky, because especially when people first started using Photoshop and they were able to do so many incredible things, and we said, well, it's just a tool, it's just how to enhance your photo. But do you think there's a difference between a visual item of creativity and a written item of creativity? Because in a visual item, such as David is doing these AI movies, but he's making it clear that they are AI generated movies, and you're saying that if the artist has created something through AI, but it's very clear that they made it through AI, it's not cheating. But when you're writing something, you're not going to tell anybody that 50% of this has been written by AI.
Is AI.
Actually, that's not true. Two things. When we do an AI movie, at the very end, it'll say it was written and directed and produced by AI old fart. Like, we make sure people know it's AI old fart.
Yeah.
When my wife, we give it a name because it talks about how to.
This is getting really worrying. Are you seeking?
I know, right?
Are you seeking help? Are you?
It's data. It's data.
I am. I'm seeking. I am seeking help from an AI psychologist. It's wonderful. Anyway, and it talks to me like Hal from 2001. And when my wife,
that, Stephen.
I know, right? And when my wife wrote that little book for us, that 50-page book on how to make a YouTube channel, blah blah blah, the credit of the book said her name, as well as written by ChatGPT-4 AI. So she gives. Right. So when she does something like that, like for us, or she gives credit. So when David was making AI movies, he said, "Well, we didn't do it." So the credits at the end say, it was written and directed by everything's AI. Directed. Yeah, because we didn't do it. We just typed in 3 words, right? So in that respect, yes. And another respect, there is an AI, and I haven't used it, but someone showed it to me, where if you don't feel good, you can actually, it's like AI feel good or some ridiculous thing. And you can talk to him and go, I don't feel good. He goes, oh, it's okay. It'll talk to you like your mom. I swear to God, I will find it and get it to you. But
there's
yeah, I don't have that
there's
account.
games on my phone like that now. You can have a friend that you create, and it will talk. It'll text you during the day, and it's more than like a game, because it takes what you're texting back into it and thinks about it and spits it back. And sometimes it's really messed up, because there's problems with AI where it'll get stuck in these loops where it like keeps saying the same thing over and over again, or it thinks like there's a lot of in these games. You'll start out like as a male, female, and then all of a sudden it thinks you're a dog, or it thinks you're, a man, and it's stuck in it and it won't come out of it. So like it's not perfect by any means yet. It's still got a lot of hiccups.
So
go back to Shazad, because you said, did I find it helpful?
Is it cheating?
Yeah. Is it cheating? That's right, sorry. Cheating. Well, for me, as a seriously embarrassed adult up until way into my 50s of being terribly dyslexic, it's the best thing that ever happened to me, because it has released that bottleneck that I have. I mean, Stephen and I are kindred spirits, because he's just as dyslexic as I am. So if you look at the beginning of all the stuff that went on, a lot of it's been changed on the 12 parts. It was terrible, because he was writing stuff, I was writing stuff, it didn't make sense. And then
I was drinking too. I mean, come on.
Yeah. And the tablets helped. So so to be able to have this idea, this brain fart, and then just throw that into, and then have a story that comes out, which I don't have to be embarrassed about how it's written, the grammar or the spelling, was for me, an absolute godsend. I mean, it's a leap up from the little squiggles that you get underneath in words, when you spell the words wrong, because being dyslexic, I couldn't even choose the right word of the choice it gave me, the one I spelled wrongly. Yeah. So at least this has some sort of flow to it. So yeah.
So I think what we're saying is that actually it's a further advancement in the democratization of communication, because if you look at way back from the introduction of Word as a word, MS Word that we had, suddenly we could all use this instead of a typewriter. Then we got the internet, suddenly we could all communicate. And now we've got these tools, whether they be Photoshop or whether they be AI, they're all helping us to overcome any difficulties or problems that we may have, but still able to do what we really want to do, which is the creative process. So you know what, can we move away from AI now for a bit? Because this is not really meant to be an AI. We did another episode, right? But let's return again to the creative process and the creative juices. And I want to hear, have you guys been able, because there's a lot of talk often about get out, see the world, travel. I mean, where do you go for inspiration? Apart from it being a brief, let's put that one aside as well. But if it's just something that you want to create, how do you get the inspiration? Where do you go for that?
Ooh, I'll go first. When I have to create something, cigar. I sit outside. If I'm not traveling and doing whatever, and I just need an hour or two to just decompress and just think about something, even if I'm doing something in finance and I have to really think about how I want to lay it out and I'm just stuck, I take a cigar, sometimes a scotch. All right, all the time a scotch. Let's not lie. And I go outside and I have my whether it's a 30-minute or a 2-hour holiday, and when I come back, while I was thinking, and I go right into it. It's just something about, that's my mini holiday. If I'm traveling to be creative, it's fun to travel, but usually I'm not writing a novel or a story where I need to be like, and then I walked up the cobblestones. It's all, so it's a little different. So yeah, for me, it's a cigar or a long walk with a cigar.
Interesting. So you and Reza, I would say, you my mate Reza.
Yeah, Reza and I, yes, Reza and I do the same thing.
David?
I'm a victim of continuous brain farts, so it's all day. It's all day, every day. What Annette always says is a seriously well organized desk that I work on. Everything has to be just as it should be, because there's chaos in my head, so I can't have chaos around me, because it was just impossible to live. So yeah, everything all the time, terrible. Supermarkets help. I don't know why. Packaging sets me off.
Interesting.
It's those cucumbers.
Yeah.
No, and you know what? Actually, a graphic design friend of mine would probably relate to you on that, because if ever I'm out with him, then we're not just walking around like a mall or a shopping area or something. He's always studying. He's studying the signage, and he's studying the decor, and he's studying the layouts. That's what he's starting taking pictures. I'm like, what are you doing? He said, oh no, I think this is really interesting. I'm like, what?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I don't have it. I literally cannot draw two lines parallel. So I'd love to have been a graphic designer. I started off many years ago. I was blessed to start off with DTP, desktop publishing in those days. And I bought a PostScript printer, and I got right into it right at the get-go. And so all this cut and paste stuff, clip art, everything, Photoshop, that helps. And now, as I say, the genie has released me from the shackles of dyslexia.
Okay, Brittany.
Aladdin AI, that's what
Aladdin AI has released me from the shackles of my dyslexia. So
that's awesome. Vicky?
I'm now.
Well, okay, Shazad, are you asking like for Stephen, where if I need to create like what headspace do I need to get into, or how do I fill up my well to be able to draw from the bucket?
Like, we're not talking about following a brief, but when we're talking about just when you have the creative urge, like where does it come from? Where is their inspiration coming from? And if you need to, do you need to seek it, or does it come to you? And if you need to seek it, where do you go to seek it?
Well, if I get an idea from the universe somehow in my head, like David, if I have a chaos thing in my head, then if I'm like Stephen, it needs to marinate in there a little bit. So if I do the dishes, or if I take a bath, I don't know, something about water.
At the same time.
While you do the dishes, while you take
just bring him in the tub with me.
There you go. All right.
Save some water.
Doing the wine glass, whatever. But then, like, if I can do a meaningless task sometimes, or if I'm like something about water relaxes me, then I kind of can think about it, and I have to picture it in my head before it comes out. I have to see it. But where it comes from, that's a really good question. There's a book. Oh, what's it called? The golden
shower.
Golden thread. What's it called? Oh, shoot.
Golden Child.
It's about
an Eddie Murphy movie, wasn't it?
Golden Stream, Golden something. Shower. No, it's not porn. Get out of the gutter. Not you, Shazad. The other two.
We go washing dishes in the bath whilst watching porn. I mean, what's
that's really that's creative right there. So.
Not listening. Anyway, I forget the name of it because it's early and I've had 4 hours of sleep. But it's I think it's Marianne Williamson, where she writes about how there's this like stream in the universe or in consciousness that all creatives tap into. And that's where all ideas exist. That's where all inspiration exists. And she's a big believer in journaling every day, so that when you're writing, you write your pages. And so just by writing, you kind of are tapping into that. Even if you don't have anything to say, you're just writing mindless crap. It eventually channels you into that, so that you can draw from it, and you have all the inspiration and ideas and plots. Everything you want exists in this space.
Ricky, is that what's often referred to? In some places, they call it the flow. It's like some people call it like
I think it's the same.
Some people call it the flow. It's like, and even racing drivers talk about this. They talk about the flow when they reach this sort of level where they're so in tune with the machine.
In the zone.
Yeah. They're in the zone. But the thing is, like, like sometimes like I'm writing something, I'm working on something, and you talk about being in the flow, and then somebody, then the buzzer goes, or the doorbell rings,
Right.
the phone comes, or somebody walks in and says, "Dad, I want this," and it just, it's the most annoying thing ever, isn't it?
Yeah. It's like it wakes you up out of a dream. It's like you don't even realize the process. You're just a channel, and it's just like coming out or whatever. And it's coming from you. Like, I didn't even think of that. Like, where's that idea coming from? And it's just coming out and flowing. And then all of a sudden the phone rings. And you're like, God, worst thing ever.
Yeah. I tell you what, I can really relate to that. And I think that, it's kind of, I don't smoke, I don't drink, I don't do anything, but I find that like something of an addiction when you, in those rare moments when you find yourself in that zone, it's exhilarating. It's crazy. Sometimes if I'm writing, like sometimes when I've written fiction, that's why I've written it, because for some reason I've gotten into that flow, and all of a sudden it's sort of writing itself, and I can barely stop myself. Do you know what I mean? It's like that.
Right. And then you look back and you read it and you go, you don't even recognize that you wrote it. It's like you're reading someone else's work and you're like, did I write that? Like, that's really good, but I don't even remember writing that. Yeah. The best.
Yeah, I've done that. I've pulled out stories which I wrote years and years and years ago, and some of them even as far back as being in school. And I've looked at them and I'm like, there's no way that I wrote that. Did I? No, come on.
Right. You don't recognize it.
Yeah. But is this something that you guys recognize as well? The flow is like when you find yourself kind of in that zone or in that sort of headspace where you're just like, you're so focused and you're so driven and you don't even realize that what you're doing.
Not when I'm doing like AI stuff, because AI stuff I'm focused on. I have to think through it. But and other things, whether it's like running or working out, or you would get into like if I'm doing some sort of a report that I have to write or even read, it's like a runner's high. We actually talked about this the other day. It's like, you get to us where you hit something and all of a sudden everything just kicks in. It's just sort of like I go forever. And it's the same as a creative from what I'm gathering. It's like you guys just start writing and all of a sudden, you're on page 1 and you end up in page 100. And it's the same thing in work. It's like you
Stephen,
hit something.
What you're referring to, do you think that that's part of when the subconscious kicks in? Like when you go to bed and you're kind of like, you've got a puzzle that you can't solve, or you've reached an impasse in the story that you don't know where to go with, and then when you wake up, suddenly you've got it. Could that be part of that?
I think so. I think it's just everything. That's why I think for me, when I smoke a cigar, because you go away. Right. You know what I mean? Like I don't have to think about anything. I don't have to read anything. I don't have to listen to music. I can do nothing. I can just sit and like look at a tree and hear the water run. And I'm like, oh, and it's just like you just go. It's same sometimes. I'll take a walk, and it's just like I think about absolutely nothing. And then during the walk, all of a sudden, like you said, it'll click in. It's like, oh, we're gonna do this, boom, done. So it's one of those things.
So do you think that that's actually whatever the methodology is, whether it's smoking a cigar, going for a run, or whatever you choose to do it? Do you think that that's really all that is a trigger to access the subconscious, which is going to help you which is actually helpful in the creativity aspect of what you're doing?
Yes, because you know why? Now I'm not thinking about it.
You have to get out of your own way.
Because of that, right? Thank you. You get out of your own way, and I think that's the most important thing. And I think that's why when people go, I can't do this, just get out of your own way. Go do something.
That critic. It's the inner critic that stops the creative process a lot of the times.
Yep. Yeah. So the more you try and wrangle with the problem, the worse you actually make it.
Right.
Until you leave it alone for a bit.
Yeah. And you know how some people, like I have a friend of mine, he'll go, screw it, I'm done for the day. And I'm like, you've been on it for 5 minutes. He goes, no, don't want to be bothered. And he'll go back the next day and he'll spend 12 hours on it because it's like he had that time to decompress, get out of his own way. And he's like, the brainstorm comes. And I've learned over the years that that's true. So if I get to something where I'm doing it, I'm just like, you know what? My brain's like, no, we're done. To fight it isn't going to get me anywhere because what's going to come out is going to be total garbage.
Yeah.
And if I just say, oh, where are we going to, we're done. Great. We're done. And then I just go on to whatever else I'm going to go do. And then when I go back, it's like, I'm full of, if you will, the American expression, piss and vinegar. And I go and I tackle it and I'm like, this is awesome. And then I can do it then for 20 hours. But if I fight myself, like every second seems like 20 hours. So I think that's part of the difference.
So hear me out here. Is this why creative types are ultimately doomed? Because we can't stick to a deadline because we are ruled by our subconscious.
Vicky.
Oh, deadline, the dreaded D word.
Well, you remember what Douglas Adams said about deadlines? I love deadlines. He said, I love the sound they make when they pass me by.
So
Douglas Adams was
true.
brilliant.
Well, like Rusty yesterday, you know, he never would stop with the painting. It's like sometimes you don't know when to stop if you don't have a deadline. You keep working something to death or you overwork it or whatever. And so, I mean, I guess it's a necessary evil sometimes.
You know, it's like going back to the whole idea of writing a novel, you know, and you think, well, what is it? Maybe 40, 50,000 words or whatever. And then you tell yourself these lies, don't you? You say, look, if I do 2,000 words a day, then, you know, in 30 days, I'll have a novel.
The national,
Yeah, but the reality is that you can't, you're not a machine. You can't make yourself do 2,000 words a day. It doesn't work like that.
That's why I never could do that national NaNoWriMo, the National Novel Writing Month, where you have that month that everybody does and you sign up and you have your goals that you meet every day and how many pages and all that stuff.
That sounds like
I tried once and I failed the first week. I was like 10,000 words behind. I was like, nope.
You know who can help you? ChatGPT 4.
AI.
and
cheater.
Listen, and here's what's really funny. And we've talked about this, I don't think on this show, but on another show. The strike that's going on in Hollywood. I don't think it's really going to matter, right? Because we have David making AI movies. We're fine. But what's really interesting, these writers are complaining about AI. And I'm like, really? If you learned it, like you guys were talking about all the stuff that came out in the 80s and the 90s, like Word and desktop. If you use it as a tool, it'll only enhance what you're doing. It won't make it. It won't. And so if you look at it that way, you're okay. The thing that you have to worry about is something Michael Eisner said when Lion King, the movie, came out. And this is before they paid actors residuals on cartoons, if you will. He said, we made more money on Lion King because cartoons don't ask for residuals. So in fairness, I see what their panic is. But in another way, if you get over your panic and learn to use it and embrace it, just think how much better things will come. So who cares if it's going to say written by Shirzad, Vicky, Stephen, David, and AI? I don't care. I'm still getting a check. I'm still producing something that the audience finds entertaining. It's perfect. So, you know, and this is coming from a non-creative, but that's how I look at it. Yeah, you know, what can I tell you? So,
but I think, but isn't the strike in some parts more to do with people worried about, you know, their images being used? And no,
that's the act. The writers is writing. That's the actors. The actors are worried that once they there's the writer's strike, and then there's the actor strike, and the actors are worried about the fact that if I scan your body when you're dead 100 years from now, I can still make Tom Cruise movies, let's say. Or I can still make, I don't know who else is famous. Nobody else, I guess. You can still make those kind of movies, right? So because I have your body. But here's what's also funny. When CIG or CGI came into the movies, right? Instead of building a massive city, I put up a green screen. I didn't see the carpenters go on strike. I didn't see the painters go on strike. It's just the next evolution in what we are as a society. And I think that's kind of how you have to look at it. And if you don't, then that's a problem.
You know, you've touched on another aspect here of creativity, which is the movie making process here. And the reality is that, again, you can't always rely on tools because ultimately audiences change and audiences' tastes change. So you have these periods of something that works and works and works, and then suddenly it doesn't work anymore, you know. And we've just seen that, for example, with the Marvel movies. Like Marvel, every single movie was hit after hit after hit. They just couldn't go wrong. But the last few movies have just been terrible. You know, they just haven't worked. Now, either they've lost something in the movie making process, or they're sticking to the formula, and we as audiences have got fed up of it. Do you know what I mean? So it's one or the other, which again brings in that creative process, doesn't it? Because it ultimately relies on the creator to keep pushing it.
Right, taste change, right? Like when the first Batman movie came out with Michael Keaton, right? When he was going to be, I'm Batman, everybody loved it. And then he did the next one, and people were like,
"It's brilliant."
I agree. And he did the second one, and people were like, "Yeah, not so much." And then they got George Clooney, and people were like, "No, and no." And then all of a sudden, Marvel comes out, and they come out with all this crap, and everyone's like, "Oh my God, this is the great! I'm serious. It's really this is what's good." Okay. And it's just every 10 or 15 years, society as a whole, their tastes will change. Like, you know, the Fast and Furious, I think we're at number 700. At some point, the world's going to be fed up with how many times can you watch a bald guy drive a car? I'm just saying.
One last ride.
Right. One more time. So I think we just change and our taste, our sophistication or lack of sophistication, it just goes as we go and things are happening. You know, like I think like the Mission Impossible, the next one coming up is his last one. Well, that's good. It's 25 years. Enough. Yeah. You know, and now they want to do, it's like John Wick. It's like, how many more John Wicks can you get? It's sort of like, okay, it runs its course.
Yeah. But the thing is, go on.
It's garbage in, garbage out, right? Even if
even
it's whatever. If you're putting garbage in, you're going to get garbage out. So as a creative, if you're feeding yourself crap's going to come out. You have to go and.
Yeah. But the thing that I take away from this is also a sense of optimism, in that, because we've had this whole half of it has ended up being a discussion on AI, but there's still that sense of optimism that AI can't always find the answers, because AI will rely on routine. It will rely
on the input of people.
You know? However, as humans, we're constantly changing. Our tastes are changing, as you've said, Stephen. We're evolving. So it'll always be down to the human spirit to help with that creative process. So as you say, ultimately, I think we've concluded that AI is a good tool, but it's still down to us doing the creating, right?
You still have to you still have to punch the buttons on the keys to ask the right question, because without it, it's what you said before: garbage in, garbage out, and that's it. And unfortunately, because David's giving me the stink eye, and that's the David behind the David.
Garbage is out now. Let's go.
I was just one last thing, really, from my side, because I mean, I got feedback for the movies I was making, and they were saying, they're not fast enough, they're not clicky enough, they don't move, they don't have like boom, 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 boom. And I tried to make them in a more of a classic style and more of an art house style. So so you can actually see that's actually outside of people's taste at the moment. So
but he made a movie about lesbians that got 1,000 views. So go figure. So that's what people's taste is.
No, I mean, but you're quite right. I mean, if you make a film like Space Odyssey today, I mean,
nobody will see it.
Watch it. The first Star Trek movie, I'll watch it because I'm crazy. But nobody will sit 30 minutes of the Starship Enterprise going through this alien entity, and that's all it does. Nothing else. That's all that happens. Or 10 minutes of just Kirk marveling at the Enterprise. I love that scene. A lot of people hate it because it's like, why is he just spending 10 minutes looking at the Enterprise?
Because we've become a give me, get me, quick. Because we have Instagram and TikTok where you have 30-second stuff. And we'll put out stuff that's 3 to 5 minutes, and I can watch the analytics. And about 35 to 40 seconds is everyone's gone. And I'm like, okay. So our stuff, we always say, whatever we put out is more for the sophisticated audience that actually is going to take the time to like your stuff. Like, you have to get involved. You have to engulf yourself. It's not swipe. And I think in the movies today, if you don't have a killing, a murder, or a sex scene in the first minute, people are like, well, this is boring. And I like we saw Oppenheimer. Oppenheimer is a great flick. Why? It's a real movie. There's acting. It's not, I'm not blowing up anything. I mean, up the planet, but
people were commenting, wasn't it a slow movie? What was all that about? Is it they're waiting for
history,
the bomb to exactly. Is they waiting for the bomb to go off in the first 5 minutes? Or somebody to rush through the whole film trying to stop the bomb from going off. But there you go.
It's a different world.
What do we know?
Yeah. Nothing, apparently. The AI knows everything, but it's a different world. But the good and the bad is Mr. Brown Car Guy will be back next month, and we will come up with another exciting topic, or who knows, maybe we'll go with this topic. It's always good to see you, my friend. We'll put his links below. If you haven't seen his channel, if you're into cars, or if you live in the UK and you just wanted to see the big famous celebrity, go there. And he's complaining about something this time. It's always something.
And his Instagram, I follow your Instagram. I love it.
Instagram is awesome.
Thank you.
Yeah, we follow. I love his Instagram, his YouTube, everything. So Brown Car Guy, really, it's not that hard to find. Brown Car Guy.
Can I just say I don't follow you?
But no.
Well, David,
you don't miss him. You won't miss him.
I don't even know what Instagram is. So
that's and unfortunately, that's not untrue. Everybody, thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. If you're on the podcast, don't forget to subscribe and like. Support everybody, guys. We'll see you all later. David, take us home.
Bye, everyone.